I'm not sure what I can do with that. Oh, no, now it's can't do anything. We'll check now if it's going.
Check, check. You guys hear me now?
Talk again. Okay, it's yeah. I didn't even touch anything.
Yep. There you go. You got it? Yeah, so I have no ability to check the output. I look at, all my indicators here and it looks like I'm recording. But until I get feedback from you guys here or until my producer is able to tell me, hey, you're not going, I have no way of knowing, right? I'm not listening to myself in my ears because otherwise you ever heard to, try and talk into a mic and listen to yourself talk? It gets pretty tricky because, what's that guy saying? All right, you know what? You want me to start over? Should we? I don't think I'm that far into it. I think we can crank this up, or do we just start from where I was? We're just going to start from the top. Sorry about that. Technical difficulty just resolved itself. Here we go. Yeah, has YouTube cut off my sound? God, I hope not. Yeah, it might even be better for you guys if you didn't hear me. So I was just watching babble. Seattle Public Health addressed the continuing problem of drug overdoses and deaths in the city and King County as a whole, claiming that racism is one of the reasons for the crisis. Does this make any sense at all? And like I was saying earlier, but you couldn't hear me, vast majority of people in Portland, vast majority of people in Seattle, you go to these homeless encampments, they're white. Vast majority of people dying of drug overdoses in the United States, white people. White people, not any other races. And we'll take a look here at a little bit at the King County statistics, the overdose data. They've got charts. And it's just so clearly, okay, yeah, these numbers are going up, but this is an equal opportunity deal. People of all races are dying from this. It's not just, let's just hit the white people. The finger pointing was part of a statement that acknowledged that from 2021 to 2022, there was a 40% increase in overdose deaths, with fentanyl being a key culprit. 107,000 people in the United States last year died of drug overdoses, right? 107,000. Do we hit 200,000 this year? I bet you we do. I've talked about this a bunch. I bet you we do. And when you start to get to those numbers, city, county, state, and federal officials, they're going to start doing the finger pointing. All right, it's because of this. You guys on the addiction services, you guys aren't helping out. It's because there's not, lack of affordable housing. They're going to come up with all kinds of stuff to blaming this on. But racism, systemic racism, this isn't one of them. The finger pointing was part of a statement that acknowledged that from 2021, 40% increase. Here's the statement. The underlying root causes that have resulted in the current overdose crisis are, unfortunately, not ones that will be reversed overnight, Seattle Public Health Communications Specialist Sharon Bogan said in a statement in local KIRO 7. Okay, that is what I have been saying, because the mechanics we'd have to put in place to stop these overdoses, we're not willing to do. We're not willing to involuntarily put people into treatment. We're not willing to, involuntarily put people into mental institutions. And so much of the drug addiction that's going on right now, it's drugs that are creating almost like a psychotic break in people. So they can't make this discernment of, you know what? I need help. I need to go get some treatment. That's just not happening. So structural factors. Okay, here it is. Structural factors, including lack of economic opportunities. All right, well, your vast majority of these overdoses, white people. So, where are we going there? And then I lead it directly into, if you are on drugs, your economic opportunities are going to go out the window. But we're talking about the causes, right? But no, you're right. If you're going down the road of drug addiction, you're not going to be able to hold a job. You're not going to have any economic opportunities. And that's going to lead to everything else going sideways for you too, right? Social isolation. All right. So, maybe during the pandemic we had that, but we've been out of the social isolation for so long. This one doesn't make any sense. I mean, what's social isolation? What? You're going and doing drugs by yourself. Vast majority of the folks that we're seeing overdose, they're in social situations. They're, they're not just one off in, somewhere else. But, maybe we're talking about people who are just socially isolating themselves. Now, sometime, but this isn't a systemic, cause. Structural racism. Again, I go with, since we're at that point, let's just jump over to the 2022 overdose death reports. Got to remember where I was. All right. So here want to make sure you guys can see this. Here in this kind of peach colored, those are white people. Those are white people ODing from drugs. Okay. And here's 2012. And then we start to ramp up, and we're really starting to ramp up here. All right. The blue is black people. So are those numbers going up? Yes. But also numbers for white people are going up. And you can see the vast majority of this, especially up in here, the vast majority are white people. Black people comprise a very small percentage. But then again, you've got I think the black population in King County is like 6.7%. So is this blue portion here overrepresented? Probably, but not by enough where you can say, hey, this is systemic racism. And then, okay, let's get into the other ones. Green is Hispanic. That's probably about half of the black population. Okay. And then we have got AIAN. I don't even know what that is, whatever that is. Asian is yellow, and you can see those have been very consistent. Okay, some happening there, and then multiple races is black, in black colored here, but vast majority white people. So, all right, okay. I mean, this to me is a stretch. This is one of those things where, systemic racism is the catch-all for everything that is bad with society today. But unfortunately, I don't think you can pin this one on the overdose that are happening. And what I was going to say earlier is Dave Chappelle has a bit where he goes, poor whites love their heroin. And you know what? After thinking about that, I'm like, oh, that's a little harsh. It's totally true. And another part of his bit is, I'm having the same feelings towards white people that white people had towards black people during the crack epidemic. I simply don't care. And he was just being brutally honest. He was like, that's happening to other people. It's kind of like that's their problem. And I think the vast majority of white people, when the crack epidemic happened, you're kind of like, what is going on there? What is the deal there? That's some craziness. But now that it's happening to the white population, as we just saw from those numbers, in much greater percentages than, any other race, multiple times more, it's like all of a sudden it's a big health crisis, right? I mean, that's just kind of, this is, the overdose situation is to the point where nobody can avoid it. I did something yesterday. I posted this is a free box of Narcan. I got 2 of these bad boys because I just wanted to see what the process was from a company in Seattle. I saw a link in one of my podcasts and I thought, I'll just talk about that for a second. And so I filled in there was a link in a podcast. I filled in my information and they said, due to the, overwhelming demand for free samples of Narcan, it may take months for you to get them. And it came in about, I'm thinking like 10 days or something. So there are 2 4 millimeter, or 4 milligram, not millimeter. Millimeter is a measure of distance, milligram measure of whatever this is. So, you just take it out and squirt it up somebody's nose, 4 milligrams, and hopefully they come back. But, this is becoming so prevalent that I went ahead and posted on my Instagram yesterday, hey, got my free sample of Narcan. And so many people reached out on that. They're like, where'd you get that? How'd you get that? And other people are like, yeah, I used that, in my street outreach was one of my Instagram people that follows me on there, or friends or whatever it is, so it's become just this crazy thing where having Narcan is, I'm just going to throw one in my gym bag. I'm going to throw one in my car. And I am not in favor of having this everywhere, because this is kind of one of those admissions of well, it's gotten so bad, we might as well just get Narcan, everywhere we can. And we're just going to roll with this. And it's okay. If you overdose, we're going to Narcan you up and away we go. So, I had mixed feelings about doing this, but I wanted to be able to go through that little drill and say, hey, you can get it. It's free. But that's part of the problem with a county like King County, where I am in, and in Seattle. That's part of the problem is people have in the back of their heads, well, if I overdose, there's probably some joker walking around here. Maybe there's some ridiculous podcaster on YouTube that's got a little bit of Narcan. And you know what? They'd be right. I am literally proving them right, that Seattle is a place where, you can go and do your drugs and overdose, and odds are much higher here than anywhere else. Because I bet, so many of you living in other places, maybe the Midwest, where this overdose thing isn't a big deal. You don't have Narcan being mailed to you for free by some pharmacy over in Seattle. It's not a thing. And you don't need it. But here in Seattle, it's like, okay, this is kind of where we're at. But blaming structural racism, I'd like to see the lead up to that. Or how do we get there? So we got structural racism. These are the structural factors. The next one is criminalization of substance use disorders. I don't think substance use disorders have been criminalized, but the decriminalization of drugs certainly hasn't helped out, right? Because you've created this society that has said, all right, you got a bunch of drugs on you, that's okay. You go out and commit crimes to feed your drug addiction, that's okay too, because we're not really going to prosecute you. We're not really going to, do much to you. And, our minimum sentencing, who needs that? And then you defund the police, don't have enough police to run around and do their thing. So all of this stuff is contributing to an ecosystem that is just wildly off the rails. And, I wouldn't be surprised if the numbers start to get really monkeyed with, as far as, you remember when we used to talk about COVID, somebody has a heart attack and dies and, check that one off to COVID. I'm kind of joking, but I'm kind of not. When are we going to start seeing that? All right, that wasn't fentanyl. That was, we're going to call that one heroin, because the numbers are starting to become, when you've got a tenth of the percentage of, or 10% of the number of COVID deaths that you have now in overdoses. Yeah, those numbers you can't avoid. So now we've got this finger pointing, well, let's blame it on systemic racism, because then, you can point that, and who's going to fix that? We've got housing stability. Housing stability is being blamed for this. I call nonsense on that. That is nonsense. Now, when you do have housing stability issues is when you're on drugs and you don't have a job. Going back to the economic opportunities, there's a double whammy right there, right? So they're pointing out some really good, aspects of this overdose epidemic we're experiencing, but not as the causes of what's really going on. So housing stability. So rent got too expensive, and so you do drugs. Okay, housing stability, you're losing your home. Well, not everybody goes to drugs and, lives a lifestyle in the streets. In King County, what we are seeing is people coming here from all over the country, because people know that they can go to San Francisco. People know that they can go to Portland. People know that they can go to Seattle. Those are hubs. Those are major West Coast hubs for all of this stuff, because we've made an ecosystem out of it that basically says, come to us. We'll help you out. We'll help you out. No issues there. If you overdose, we're gonna help you out. I mean, San Francisco just closed down in the Tenderloin district, I think it was the Tenderloin district, a massive clean shoot-up area. And of the thousands and thousands, I think, was it 23,000 people, something like that? I think 18 went into rehab, 18 contacted services. So people don't want to get off this stuff. They want to go to an area where they can do this, live in an environment that's going to make it easy for them to do it, get fed, And speaking of being fed, remember that video I showed you of Wendy? She was the homeless person down in Portland. And she just basically started babbling about, this is the greatest place ever. They make it so easy to be homeless here. And she was on, whatever drug she was on. She had lost her dentures, if you remember that story. Well, that tweet went viral. And I think that had like 7 or 8 million views the last time I saw it. And that actual video. And then her family came out from Utah, and she had a bunch of siblings, I think 9 siblings. So they came to Portland and they showed the reunion. And I don't know if she's going to leave. I don't know if she's going to get help. But, she basically broke it down, and she, didn't get in trouble, but she kind of retracted, you know what, it's not as easy as I was saying. And she wanted to kind of, I'm sure some people got to her and said, hey, it would be nice if you said that it wasn't quite as easy as you're making it out to be in Portland. And part of that was she was naming a place that she could go to and get food. You go over to the whatever it was. You eat and you go get high. You eat lunch, go get high. You eat dinner, go get high. She was basically breaking it down, and that went viral, and everybody was like, okay, all right, there you go. And stigma. Stigma is the last structural factor here. Okay, and what comes to mind there is drugs are bad, right? From South Park, drugs are bad. Yeah. So you've got the stigma of drugs are bad, being on drugs is bad, okay? But that's because all of this other stuff ruins your life. There should be a stigma against this. It shouldn't be, hey, it's good to do drugs. Go out and go do your fair share of fentanyl. You got to drop the hammer on this stuff, or you just let it rip the way we're doing. And so many of you say, hey, it's taken care of itself. It is a self-fulfilling, survival of the fittest. And if enough druggies take fentanyl and overdose, well, that's the system kind of righting itself. And where that breaks down is, what if that's your kid? What if that's your parent? What if that's your grandparent? Whatever it is. Vast majority of these overdoses happen sometime before age 50, right? What if that's your nephew? What if that's your grandson, granddaughter? That's where it kind of breaks down, where people are like, yeah, there's that. So, and that's where I kind of go to that. All right. So if you could save a life with one of these bad boys and you didn't have the Narcan on you, all right. Yeah. Would you have it stuck in the back of your head? Maybe I could have done something. But then the flip side to that, and the reasonable side to that, is we shouldn't have to be doing this nonsense, right? I mean, when I watched Pulp Fiction back in the day, and Eric Stoltz took that needle and jabbed it into, was it Uma Thurman? I think it was Uma Thurman, and she just popped up. You had heard about that kind of stuff, right? That was the adrenaline needle. You had heard about that kind of stuff. But overdoses happen to, those heroin people. Now they're happening all day long because this fentanyl that they've got and the meth that they've got are so strong that, a couple of milligrams will just take you out, put you in the dirt box nap, right? So in summary here, lack of economic opportunities. No. People are making choices to do these drugs. Social isolation. Okay. Maybe there's some data on that there somewhere. Structural racism. I'm going to have to say no. Criminalization of substance use disorders. All right, maybe you got some data on that, but the way I see that is it's the drugs killing people and people making choices. How about not blaming their addictions? How about blaming their choices? And they've got the choice to, get themselves into rehab. They can make that choice. Do I use today? Do I not use today? Where that breaks down is these drugs that we've got going here. And the reason they're killing so many people is because they're so strong, and because people, when they get hooked on them, unless they've got a real strong family structure, you don't have anybody in your camp to say, hey, you need to get off this crap, because it takes a lot of dropping the hammer to get somebody off of this stuff. Like to the point where other people in your family, other friends and family are going to say, hey, You just need to let that one go. All right. You let that one go and they die. Okay. So, it's all part of the big picture, right? So we've got the housing stability, yeah, and stigma. All right, yeah, drugs are bad, addiction is bad, it's horrible, it's not good to die from an overdose. Those are some things that come to mind when I read this. And those are just some of the factors that will require long-term systemic changes and resources at all levels, from federal to state to local. This is where I do agree with this statement, because it's not a housing issue in the homeless encampments. It's a drug issue. It's a drug issue. But everybody wants to say, well, because of income inequality and you got rising housing prices, most of the people in the homeless encampments aren't from Seattle. Most of the people in Portland are not from Portland. They're from all over the United States, and they float between cities. They float between cities. I did a podcast the other day on a kid that overdosed, and he was on his way up to Alaska, stopped in Seattle for 3 days, never got to Alaska, and his parents are just, they're heartbroken. And that's where, this stuff happens. And we don't have the state. We don't have the county. We don't have the local, the federal. We don't have any of the support systems to start putting dozens and dozens and dozens of people into rehab. We don't have that. And the insurance system is so brutal to get somebody in. If you've got Mac Daddy insurance, which most drug addicts do not, because of that whole don't have a job thing, it's, virtually impossible to get into treatment center. You can get into state centers, but they make it hard because they've got so many people that are coming in from the prison system. They're coming in from wherever to get in there. Yeah, we don't have the social services to deal with this. So I do agree with the fact that, we're playing whack-a-mole with the people out in the homeless encampments, and we're just, moving them around. But bottom line is, until you get some of these folks into treatment, your numbers really aren't going to come down. The statement came amid the revelation that the Seattle Fire Department has dealt with a staggering rise in overdoses in the past year. You look at the number on how many responses they're doing. I talk with police officers, say the same thing. Went out on 5, overdoses today. And you know what? What was really interesting, one exchange I had was 60%. This is a hard fact. No, we're totally guessing. 6 out of 10 addicts, when they wake up from an overdose, you know what they say? What do you think they say? I didn't do any drugs. I don't do drugs. I've never done drugs. And yet they've just woken up because some cop or some fireman gave them a dose of this. It's like, all right, so I just gave you a little spray there, the Narcan, and you popped right up and you're here with us, but you're denying that you're on drugs. Well, that's what you do, right? Just completely deny the whole situation. Then they also wake up very agitated and wake up, swinging, because they're just all, it's not going the way they thought it would go. What happened? What am I doing? So, these are not great calls for Seattle Fire Department, Seattle Police Department, Portland Fire, any of these entities to be going out on. And then the statistics are becoming so great now that you can't avoid it. So let's blame housing opportunities. So on a daily basis, Seattle firefighter EMTs and paramedics respond to suspected overdoses across the city in our unhoused and housed population. Fire department tweeted on Monday. Over the past 12 months, Seattle Fire Department has responded to more than 5,200 patients with suspected overdoses, compared to 3,600 incidences the year prior. So that is spiking, and the number of people dying from overdoses is spiking as well. So, Seattle Fire Department goes on to tweet, most of us know someone who personally has struggled with drug addiction on a daily basis. Seattle firefighters, they go out and they try and deal with this. One of the other things that I've been following is that we're basically using police and firemen in place of social workers, because, they should be out, working on, actual crimes, right? And because their bandwidth is so minimal, they're not able to when they're doing all this other stuff. So if you wonder why, you're not able to get, if you're a business owner in Portland, business owner in Seattle, and you wonder, why isn't anybody coming by today? Well, they're trying to revive that guy who just overdosed. Yeah, that's literally what we're talking about. So you've only got bandwidth for so much, and overdoses are a priority call. We had a police officer in Seattle, run somebody over, trying to get to somebody, trying to save somebody's life. Accidents happen. That's horrible. You think that cop did it on purpose? All right, I'm going to run this guy over here, this gal over here, so that I can go save this other person's life. No, that's, totally unreasonable. Totally unreasonable. And yet the person that got killed at the intersection in Seattle is now one of those people that, because it happened by accident from a police officer, they're being, made out to be a saint, just like the tree hugger down in Atlanta, in Cop City, who shot at a cop and then was, returned fire, killed him. That person is now a saint in, activist groups. And it's like, the cop running over somebody is an accident. That happens. Stuff happens. I'm surprised it doesn't happen more often with how much, just running around, cops are doing. And it's just, it's wild stuff, right? And it's not going away is the bottom line. It's not going away, because what's it going to take to get these people off the drugs? What's it going to take to get them off of the streets? It's going to take some pretty hardcore rehab. It's going to take some pretty hardcore getting into mental health care facilities, because a lot of these people, these drugs are so strong, it breaks them. I don't know if they can come back. I don't know if we have the data on, all right, here's what the super meth now is doing to an individual. And do we have the long-term studies? No, we don't, of what it does to somebody's mental state. The Washington Supreme Court effectively decriminalized drug possession in the state in 2021 when it ruled that the existing statute making it unlawful was unconstitutional. The decision came in a case of a woman who was arrested on suspicion of an unrelated offense, and when she was searched, cops allegedly found cocaine in her pants pocket. She claimed she had borrowed the jeans from a friend, but was convicted nonetheless. This is what we're dealing with in Washington. No, that's not my stash. Well, that's your car. I know, and it's your backpack. I know. Somebody must have put it there. These are my friend's jeans. Who borrows pants from their friends? Do you borrow clothes I can understand maybe a sweatshirt when it's cold outside and you went over to somebody's house, something along those lines. But pair of pants, and if you borrow somebody's pants, do you check the pockets? Oh, hey, got a little cocaine in here. Extra bonus today. So ridiculous. So ridiculous. You borrowed those pants. Somebody left coke in your pocket. Oh my gosh, we need to change the laws for this. We need to decriminalize this stuff because, war on drugs didn't work, and we're going to make this so much better. Yeah, hasn't really worked that way, has it? So you've got all these direct things you can point at. Systemic racism, in my opinion, isn't one of them. So the state Supreme Court overturned it because the law did not require a defendant to know that they possessed drugs. I didn't know. I had no idea. Come on. I mean, it's kind of like the overdose victim popping up and said, what drugs? What drugs? There was no drugs. There was no drugs. How about those bears? How about those bears? It's from another podcast. Yeah, you get the reference, right? It's just in the state of Washington. In other states, they'd say, no, that's on your possession. That's on you. Straight to jail. Go to jail. In Washington State, no, we want to give people a break and decriminalize it. And that is how you get to a point where we're blaming, this on systemic racism. Because what else do you have to blame? You certainly can't blame your own policies. You certainly can't do that. Seattle, Seattle, it's going to have 7 of 9 positions open in the Seattle City Council. 7 of 9. Do you think the residents of Seattle are going to, bring in all Republicans? Are they just going to go hardcore Republican? No. They might go a little bit more moderate, but whoever can spin the best tale on how they're going to solve all this stuff, given the framework that they're working with, they're going to win, right? It's probably not going to be a socialist. Probably not, right? In the meantime, lawmakers are pushing to put a statute on the books for that decriminalizes drug possession. In a conversation with local KNKX Public Radio, King County prosecuting attorney Lisa Mannion said she believes that those who want to criminalize drug possession really want to stop people from using in public. Okay, this is some nonsense right there. It's not that we want to stop people from using. Well, we do, because that's not okay either, right? But it's the whole ecosystem that this brings. We want to stop people from living in tents out on the street as well, because, criminal activity, we want to stop the violence going on. We want to stop the fires from going on. We want to stop the break-ins of local businesses. That's just become an epidemic as well. Break-ins to fund their next hit, right? That's, some of what we want to stop. We want to stop human fecal matter on the sidewalks, because people who do drugs, they don't really care where they go. We want to stop used needles in the parks. That'd be special. That'd be good. We want to stop tinfoil from, clogging up our drains. We want to stop that. So to say that those who want to criminalize drug possession really want to stop people from using in public, no. That is one tiny little bit, but this is, that's silliness. It really is. I really believe what folks want. They want the behavior to stop. And there is nothing magical about a jail cell that cures substance use disorder or addiction, Mannion said. No, that is true. But I can't tell you how many stories that I've read where people have said, you know what? I was physically able to kick the drug addiction, and then it was up to me to make the mental choice. I was physically off of it. I had the choice when I went back out of jail. I can either choose, Avenue A or Avenue B, and that's the mental choice you're able to make. But until you've got the physical part kicked, you're going nowhere. You're going nowhere. So no, maybe jail doesn't cure substance use disorder or addiction. Maybe there are some ways, but we're not putting people in mandatory year-long drug treatments either. We're not even doing much beyond 30 days, and that's all based on insurance. And so, so much of what you read about is somebody went to drug, diversion therapy, and then they got let out. They never showed up. They, got let out and committed another crime. We've just become too lenient. So what are some of the things that we're going to do? Yeah, we're going to have a lot of finger pointing like we got going on here, right? It's blaming these other things. To me, it's just, that's interesting, because you can't look at yourself and go, well, I voted the politicians in who are making this policy. I supported criminalizing drugs, and now I've got to live with those decisions. And now I have to live in a community where this is just par for the course. This is happening. Break-ins are happening daily. All those things we talk about that are part of the addiction process that are happening in real time out in public. It didn't used to be a out in public deal, did it? You'd hear of people overdosing, but they'd overdose in their own house. They'd overdose, in one of those houses where they did a lot of drugs. Now it's just right out in the open. And so much of this stuff is just staring us in the face. And so the residents and the business owners that voted for all this stuff, they're looking for anybody to blame. Why can't the police come faster when they break into our store? Well, because of this, and this. That requires me to take some responsibility. We can't do that. Because then we'd have to look at ourselves and go, we caused this. And everybody in from the outside is looking in going, how many comments do I get on YouTube? You get what you paid for. You voted this in. You got to deal with it. And you know what? It's true. It's absolutely true. There's no way around it. So blaming racism, yeah, That's a stretch at best, right? It's a stretch at best based on the data. I'd say the science, but I'm just looking at data. All right. That's it for this one. I thought that was a really interesting one. It's racism. I'm going to take a quick peek and let me tell you what else I've got here going. Let's see what my other topics are so you can know. I've got a long story that is really interesting from a Willamette Week that kind of talks about some of the more wealthy Portland folks who are leaving Portland, tax situation there, and they're just getting the heck out because of violence and taxes. And we got 3 break-ins in 3 weeks. That is a Southeast Portland comic book store. Older dude running a comic book store, not making a lot of money. He's got this kind of stuff going on. That's kind of the micro of the macro that we're talking about here. I'm going to look at some of your comments here, see what you guys are talking, and see what you guys are doing. Lisa, 67, believe, you bet. So many different levels of jail. It also tells of those who never taught gods that will get consideration. Word knows who will willfully reject it. Yeah, there's a lot of, we've got a lot of, I'm trying to get my cursor in the right spot here. There we go. All right. There is a lot of this has to do with personal choice, right? It's just, you know, you make your own choices and you got to live with those choices. But in a city like Seattle, we're kind of enabling people to make the choices that they are. Liberalism is the cause of every major problem. You know, there's an argument to be made there, right? Because you look at some of the stuff that's come about. I was looking at the 15 most, there was an article, it was, and I might podcast on it. It was, here's the 15 most violent cities in the United States. And hey, Portland isn't one of them. Portland wasn't even close. But if you look at the, top 15 cities in the United States, I don't think one of them was Republican run. I don't think one of them was. So is there something to that? Is there something different in the water, blue versus the red? No, it's policy, right? It's policy. So it's not liberalism. It's irresponsible. Liberals are idiots. Okay. Let's just call it the way it is. Yeah. But I've got liberal friends and, I struggle with that. They're all, way more center. I have no far left leaning because that would not work out. Right. It just doesn't. And, I think you have to have people in your life. You got to have some people. You get hardcore right wingers. I don't have any of those. Don't have any hardcore left. I have a lot of people down the middle. And we have the discussions. Hey, what's going on in Seattle and what's going on in Portland is awful. It's horrible. But then you get to that next level of conversation, which is, why is this? And if you come right out of the gate with, well, liberalism is stupid. It's created all of this. What you have to go with is, well, here's the policy I see that enabled this to happen here, and here's what we've got. So that's kind of the way I handle it, from more of just a reasonable, so that somebody who doesn't quite believe that has the ability to go, okay, point A to point B to point C. It's kind of like that scientific theory where you've got, all right, I'm going to prove this. And you get to the end and you're like, all right. And then it kind of comes down to facts don't care about your feelings, right? Facts. It's just, I don't like this. I don't like the fact that you're blaming this on liberalism. Deal with it. You know what I mean? Let's see what else you guys are saying. When the law cannot be enforced, police defunded. Yeah. I mean, police being defended or defunded, either which way. Yeah. Satan was the original liberal. That would make a good t-shirt, wouldn't it? It would. Yeah, probably. Hey, it's okay. Just have a little bite. It'll be all right. Take that apple. It's okay. I mean, one bite's not going to hurt you. I mean, you should have the ability to make your own choice to eat that apple. Here's an apple. I got a box of them back here for you. Are you hungry? I'll give you that apple. Yeah, I know it's illegal. I know you're not supposed to have it, but we're just going to decriminalize the apple, and here you go. Right? That's a vast generalization, but yeah. When the law isn't enforced, police defunded, and crazy going on, theft rings, then it's crazy. Samantha, you're absolutely right. Yep. Sorry, Samantha. Defunded. Yep. All right. So I'm not even right wing. I voted for Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. The left has moved so far. I have no choice but to vote Trump. That is what, I've had that conversation with so many people. So many people. If I had a better choice than Trump, would I have gone there? It depends. I would have to see what that looks like on paper. But, we've just got these wildly disparate choices, right? So I think there's a lot of people, and I know of a handful of people that, would have voted for Trump, but they kind of see what's going on and they're like, I don't really want to see this other crap going on either. So I'm being forced to go here. There's no middle of the road, is there? There's no middle of the road. And that's where, a lot of this stuff, I think there is middle of the road, but we don't hear about it. We don't see it. It's all one extreme or the other. We've become just a, two-party system, and so wildly divided because, politicians are just, they're going one or the other. And the people who get all of the airtime are the extremists. The people that are in the moderate, trying to make things happen, nobody wants to hear them because if it bleeds, it leads, and the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? And it's just, if you make enough noise, you'll get heard. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, she gets heard, right? She gets heard. AOC gets heard because they spout off a lot of just stuff. All right. I'm going to move on to my second podcast here. I'm going to get a drink of water. You guys have big plans for your weekend? Are you guys just going to go out and just hit a rager or something? You just going to go hard? That's what I always ask my kids because I'm not. I'm in bed at about the same time. I might stay up like an extra hour on the weekend. Maybe go out to dinner, something like that. But yeah, my days of raging are over. Too hard to get up the next day, right? All right, let's hit. That's an interesting one. Barack Obama caused most of the leftist failures we are seeing now. A lot of people not Barack Obama fans, especially the Motor City Madman, 10 Fingers of Doom, Ted Nugent. I think he called Barack Obama a mongrel. Remember when that happened? Like, oh, okay. Well, I'm sure the FBI is going to be paying him a little bit of a visit. So here's that article from Willamette Week. And this is a really interesting article from the standpoint of bringing in, and it's, I don't even know what the title is, and maybe I can scroll up here and show you. I had to modify this article to get it on the screen for you guys. Rising taxes and a falling quality of life have some Stumptown residents voting with their feet, is what the title was. The old saying is a conservative is a liberal who's been mugged. That's a good one, isn't it? That's a good one. I mean, it kind of makes sense. Everybody's all hunky-dory about how their city is until you get mugged, and then you're like, we need tougher on crime. We need more crime. I mean, we need more police. We need more crime. And you're like, hey, but you were the one that wanted to defund the police. You were the one that, put the defund police in your window. But now that your store got broken into, where are the cops? Conservative is a liberal who's been mugged. In Portland, many liberals are dodging stray bullets, losing catalytic converters to thieves, and sidestepping tents. Then they open their tax bills. I thought that was a great lead-in. Because you're like, okay, here's what they're dealing with. And then here's where the rubber hits the road. I'm not paying for all this stuff. I'm just not. Maybe they aren't voting Republican. Excuse me. But some are voting with their feet, getting the hell out of a city that once stole their hearts, driven away as taxes rise and quality of life declines. So this is what's going on. This is the struggle in Portland. This is, and Portland more particularly, because what's happening in Seattle, what's happening in LA, what's happening in San Francisco is happening on turbocharge in Portland. It just is in real time. You've got, Portland went so far liberal that the situations that they've got going on are to the point where, people are literally, all right, we got to get the F out of Dodge, right? We got to get the F out of Stumptown. And it's happening. So, sorry, make you dizzy there. Multnomah County has lost residents for the past 3 years, according to Portland State's University Population Research Center. Before 2020, it hadn't lost people since 1987. Year I graduated from high school. Great. And that was just a 1-year blip in an upward run that began in 1984. See if I can make this easy. In the most recent PSU study, their estimate for the year ended July 1st, 2022, the population fell by 2,321. And you might say, oh, that's not very much, but they've had a massive influx for years and years and years. And now, all right, we got a little bit of an outflow. What's going on here? The cause was outmigration, PSU says, which is a fancy way of saying people bailed. They left. That may not sound like a lot in a county that has 812,000 residents as of July 1st, 2021, but it's a reversal of fortune for a city that once attracted migrants from other states the way locally roasted Chemex coffee draws men with sleeve tattoos. It's a Portland reference, right? What's up with the sleeve tattoos? I'm not saying they're bad, but these West Coast cities, everybody's got a sleeve tattoo. I was looking at a kid I knew on Instagram that he's been doing the real estate gig. And, a whole bunch of tattoos up and down his arm. It's like, okay, we just gotten to a point where that seems to be okay. Tattoos back in the day when I was a kid, only outlaws had tattoos. Sailors had had tattoos, and rock stars had tattoos. Nobody else did. Then the NBA came along and everybody got tatted up, and now everybody has tattoos, right? Josh Lehner, a state economist, says his department had expected a rebound in 2022, but it didn't arrive. The longer the slump in population lasts, he says, the less likely pandemic-related moving patterns are to blame, and the more likely it is that Portland has a problem. Are we just a year off, he asks, or is there something fundamentally different? Yeah, there's something more fundamentally different. So Portland's got a few things going on that really are hampering, the ability to draw people in. For some longtime Oregonians, the U-turn is hardly puzzling. Portland has switched from attracting new arrivals to repelling its current citizens, especially those with a few coins in their pockets and feet that start itching at tax time. Stu Peterson, 65, grew up in Portland and has been selling commercial real estate for decades as a partner at Macadam Forbes. Did I say that right? I have no idea. He says the recent outflow of Portlanders with means is something new in his experience. I've never seen money move out of here, Peterson says. Nobody ever wanted to leave Oregon. It's a beautiful place. Most evacuees are high-wage earners who are fed up with crime, taxes, and homelessness, in that order. That's an ugly spiral. And so, the crime has to do with the drugs, which has to do with the homelessness, and then you're going to have a tax base that's eroding. Downtown Portland's tax base, eroding. San Francisco's tax base, eroding. Seattle's tax base, eroding. Because you got less businesses. There aren't enough businesses to keep everything going. There's not enough people there to keep everything going. The exodus includes names with the cachet in Portland's most exclusive clubs. Jordan Menashe, chief executive of homegrown Portland real estate firm Menashe Properties, left last year for Dallas. Marquee developer Mark Edlin also appears to have shifted his primary residence eastward. He canceled his Oregon voter registration last year. In an interview, Edlin said that he'd always planned to retire in Sun Valley, Idaho, where he lives now, but he's still doing most of his philanthropy in Oregon. Yeah, I always planned on doing this, but this just kind of gave me that little extra bump out the door. That little extra, I need to exit stage left. The taxes are pretty close to the same, Edlin says. I haven't done the math. Founders of Baker Ellis Asset Management, LLC, Barnes, Ellis, and Brian Baker, packed up their money management firm and moved it across the Columbia River to Vancouver, Washington. I mean, that is not far. And it's my understanding that Vancouver is starting to get some of the real impact from Portland as well. But it's nowhere near as bad tax-wise, or, all the other stuff we're talking about. Different political climate, and Portland in particular. I was watching Mayor Ted the other day sitting in a hearing, just taking a beat down from some business owners. And it was like, would not want that guy's job. Mayor of Portland, tough gig. Whoever inherits that job, you got your hands full there. That's a real go-getter that wants to take that job on. Property records show that Ellis moved his residence north too, buying a place in Ridgefield, a little bit further up in Washington. Ellis didn't seek return call seeking comment. Few upper crust Portlanders would discuss moving. Some wealthy expatriates worry that Multnomah County or the Oregon Department of Revenue will pay special attention to their taxes on the way out, says one real estate broker who declined to be named. That wouldn't happen, would it? Hey, we need you to pay some more taxes. How about down in California where they're talking about, chasing people out of town with their, what was that? That was an excise tax on wealth, I think it was what it was. Yeah, these cities are going to run out of out of money for their budgets. They're going to start going after some crazy stuff, and it's going to push more and more people out, and that whole thing is just going to continue. Regular folks were more willing to talk about their decisions to go. In the past month, Willamette Week spoke with 6 people who have left or are preparing to leave Portland. All of them are upper middle class. Most of them described bittersweet feelings about departing a city that once drew them like a magnet or even a lover. I've had so many people leave comments of the Portland I knew 25 years ago. Man, it is dead. It is not there. The Seattle I knew 25 years ago, it's not there. It's changed drastically. And Portland in particular, because I think if you're into the whole Portland thing, you're like really into it. I mean, it's a thing. And, there's still, so many hardcore people. There's nothing going on here. It's pretty okay. It's good. I get those comments every now and then. It's not as bad as the media makes it out to be. Well, the data says otherwise, and your rich people are moving out. So I don't know. But none of them had second thoughts. Katie Schneider was one of them. She moved to the Woodlawn neighborhood of Northeast Portland in 2009 and says she quickly grew accustomed to the occasional sound of gunfire outside her house. When I read that, I was like, maybe, did you initially think about reconsidering your move, or did you just kind of go with it and just do that? I'm hearing the lazy river sound in the background, the babbling brook sound in the background of gunfire. Then someone opened fire from a car on a summer evening in 2020, killing 22-year-old Jordan Lee Lewis on Deckham Street, just around the corner from her house and in front of Breakside Brewery, where her family frequented. 7 months later, after putting her kids to bed, a car crashed in the intersection in front of her house. Her husband found a man gut shot and bleeding. 3 parked cars had been struck, and police found 60 shell casings in the street. If that doesn't make you want to get the heck out of Dodge, I don't know what does. You know what I mean? That happens in front of my house. All right, I'm out of here. Don't really care where I'm going. Anywhere but here. In April 2021, 2 months after the car crash, they moved to a rented house in Vancouver, where she worked as a school counselor. Her husband, a bridge engineer, worked from home. A year and a half later, they moved to Anacortes. That's up here, way up north and west, kind of up by Canada. Schneider wasn't alone. Our whole block moved within 2 years, she says. Schneider, 42, is a liberal who still loves Portland, but she couldn't raise her family in a city where leaders don't seem to have any solutions, despite having coffers full of taxpayers' money. See, that's, it still identifies as a liberal, love the liberal policy, but has got that disconnect from how did we get here? Let's take a look at the policies that got us here. How did we get here? I don't understand that whole disconnect. It doesn't make any sense to me, because when I run into somebody like that, I'm like, hey, liberal policies, exactly, how you got there. They're like, there's some things that Portland could improve on, but it's not all that. And all I can think of is, it is. Let me scroll down here. I don't mind paying taxes, but I need to know that they're being put to good use, Schneider says. If they had been, I wouldn't have had to move to a different state. All right, well, it's not just taxes, right? It's a lot of other stuff going on. How about How about the, cars and dodging bullets in your front yard? How about that? I mean, not every city has that, do they? So what were the mechanics of how you got to that point? What happened there? We got some room for improvement. Still love Portland, though. Still love the tatted up baristas and all that stuff. Most of the people who spoke with Willamette Week were leaving for two reasons: high taxes and a growing sense of danger. Schneider spoke openly about the former, as did some others. All were eager to speak about the latter, about taxes. Lauren McCabe says she left in August 2021, mostly because her kids, now 8, 10, and 12, struggled with school closures during the pandemic. Her oldest attended Cathedral School in Northwest, where she says teachers sometimes hustled kids in from recess because nearby tents had caught fire, raising fears of toxins in the smoke. Why'd you guys move? Well, why'd you move your kid's school? Well, there's homeless encampment next door. Every now and then, they'd be lighting up their fentanyl and it would catch the tent on fire. And I didn't want my kids to smell the toxins in the air. That'd be the least of my worries. When those tents go up, my kids are not going to school there. Hardcore no. And yet, these people, because of the way they believe, well, it's, not their fault that they're in a tent shooting up all day. People actually believe that a lot of the folks in tents aren't on drugs. And now the data is starting to come in that it's too hard to disbelieve. There's so much evidence of, all right, shenanigans in the encampments are happening on the daily. McCabe, who voted for Barack Obama twice, then Hillary Clinton, had a number of unpleasant encounters. On one occasion, McCabe's husband and son waited for the school's gates to open, and a man sat down behind their car, shot up, and left the needle in the street. Sounds about normal. I mean, what's wrong with that? I mean, the guy, he just a little shoot up in the street. Pretty normal. While walking to Salt and Straw on a date night, she and her husband were chased by a woman who was talking to herself. Those are pretty normal circumstances in certain areas of, Seattle, certain areas of Portland, certain areas of LA, San Francisco. That's just normal. And that's why people are leaving, right? McCabe and her husband are both chiropractors. Pandemic restrictions made it hard to operate. Yeah, it's hard to operate when you can't really touch people or see people, be within 6 feet of them. And new taxes squeezed their budget. After 18 years in Oregon, McCabe, 43, decided it was time to go. She sold her practice and bought one in Naples, Florida. That's interesting. Florida. Huh. So many people are moving to Florida. So many people are moving to Texas. They're just getting out of Dodge. They're going Idaho. I don't think I was ever leaving Oregon, McCabe says, but she did, as did some of her new neighbors on the Gulf Coast. There are a handful of Oregonians who live near us. We share stories. So you've got like entire neighborhoods. Hey, let's all migrate to Naples, Florida. Some Portlanders bristle when they hear about people leaving. Stephen Green, founder of Pitch Black, a competition for Black entrepreneurs, say the panic about Portland is overdone. It's not that bad. It's okay. I mean, it's pretty normal to have somebody shoot up while we're waiting to get my kid into school. The tents burning up my kid's school. It just happens. We had a lot of people move here from 2008 to 2012 because we were number one on this list or number one on that list, Green says. Portland still shows up as like a city for, healthy activity, number of trails, number of bike paths. It's a massively popular city for those activities. That's if you can get past the tents, and all this other chaos going on. They came here to consume the culture, not add to it. A lot of folks who are leaving were never committed. I'll be here in 30 years. All right. Well, if that's your thing, stay there and do your thing. Others are wavering in that commitment. Developer Rosalind Hill grew up in Portland and bought her first commercial property on Northeast Alberta Street in 1991. She's been committed to the neighborhood since removing graffiti and picking up trash. There's a lot of people trying to help out, but there's a lot of people saying, no, we're done. This isn't working out. She's growing weary of the blight and of paying taxes that don't seem to pay for improvement. Recently, she returned home to find a man sitting on the bench in front of her house on North Lombard eating chicken, throwing the bones into her garden, and charging his phone on one of her outdoor sockets. This is an entitled group of people that have overtaken these West Coast cities, And this is just what they're doing. They do not give a crap because there are no repercussions for their actions. And then, that's the least of her worries. It's the people breaking into the homes that we're seeing on the regular. Add the steady drip of new taxes, and it came to drive her mad, especially the new preschool for all tax. I paid for my own kids' preschool, Hill 78 says. I worked 3 jobs to do it. Yeah, but, in a city like Portland, you're going to pay taxes and you're going to have just a bunch of stuff that makes 0 sense because that's why you live there, right? In August, she bought a duplex in Vancouver. She's been fixing it up and hopes to move sometime soon. So people are, getting out. Paying taxes for issues that don't seem to change how the city looks and feels is disappointing, Hill says. I live where I live. Portland is my home, but paying additional taxes with no improved outcome is hard. You get what you pay for. And I'd also say that you probably voted in a bunch of those taxes. You did, right? Starting in 2017, Multnomah County voters passed several tax measures aimed at improving life in their burgeoning city. After Metro and the county levied taxes to combat homelessness and provide preschool for all, Portland now has the second highest total state and local income tax rate in the nation, 14.69%, exceeded only by New York City at 14.78%. Now that's a top marginal tax rate, meaning you pay it only on income above $125,000 for individuals, $250,000 for married couples filing together. By comparison, the New Yorkers at 14.7.8, those are making $25 million or more, single or married. That means plenty of non-plutocrat Oregonians are paying taxes rivaled only by those levied on Gotham millionaires. So that's why you've got a situation of where the upper middle class is saying, I don't think so. Hard on the voice. Talking. Unfortunately, just as taxes went up, quality of life went down. A record 101 homicides. We've talked about that. How many times? 101 homicides, and that's after 92 homicides the year before. So you got these shootings going on, tents everywhere. You just got a rough situation. How about this next one that we've talked about a bunch? 11,000 cars stolen in Portland last year. 11,000 cars. I mean, there's 800 homeless encampments. Stu Peterson and his cohort argue that people like Schneider who flee the bullets are canaries in the Stumptown coal mine and that we had better cut taxes soon or else. You don't have the ability to in Portland because you're going to have to drop infrastructure. So what are you going to do? That's why I say it'll be interesting to see the next mayor of Portland, see what they come up with, see what spin they have. Things are likely to get worse too, they say, unless Portland voters come to their senses. In December, the state said activists had gathered enough signatures to put a measure on Multnomah County's May 2023 ballot that would levy a 0.75% tax on capital gains to hire attorneys for tenants facing eviction. More nonsense. So you've got some massive, massive rent increases in Portland as well. Massive. There is no affordable housing in a lot of the areas. And now you're going to put a capital gain tax to hire attorneys for tenants facing eviction? I mean, aren't there enough, services out there already where you don't have to do that? So we've got a couple more stories here, but you kind of get the idea of exactly where they're going with this, right? You got story after story of, this one's pretty good. I'm going to read this one. That's what worries Erica Hetfield. Until last year, she lived with her husband and 5-year-old daughter in a stately 1928 colonial in Eastmoreland, across the street from Reed College. She had a view of the iconic old dorm block. She had heard screaming on many nights. Again, I go back to, if you hear screaming in your neighborhood, if you hear gunshots, you might want to think about that. Once during dinner, someone pounded on one of the windows. Okay, there's another sign. Here's your sign. Another time, she discovered a purse in her hedge. She opened it and found a pair of baby shoes, job application for a gas station, some art supplies, and a bunch of used needles with blood in them. Okay, all right, this is not painting a great picture, is it? Hetfield, 41, admits that she might be more fearful than most. In October of 1975, her aunt was basically shot dead in a parking lot mall. That's not good. And that murder remains unsolved. Hetfield reached her breaking point just before Thanksgiving in 2021. She was at work.
It's working now.
Yeah. All right. It looks like it's working. We have no idea why this is going on. Just all of a sudden, the OBS system shuts down the audio. I'm not sitting here changing anything. Sorry about that. Yeah. So, and my audio levels before, they were okay. There you are. Sorry about that. I need to look over here more often and have my guy look more often. So, okay. All right. So we're going to move on to a different story here. And yep, everybody's saying it's on. Sorry about that. Stuff, right? There's always something going on. How about we move on to 3 break-ins in 3 weeks. Southeast Portland comic book shop loses thousands to thieves. I hate to sit on this stuff, but I think it's important that you kind of look at, exactly what's going on, because there's so many people that are basically saying, it's okay. It's not that bad. So let's get through this one. Let's get through the comic book, and hopefully we don't lose audio. No idea why that's going on. It's hard to troubleshoot something when things just kind of randomly go off. You guys are talking about tattoos. Tattoos, just sleeves and sleeves of tattoos. The owner of a comic book store in Southeast Portland is frustrated after the 3rd break-in in 3 weeks. John Thomas has owned Disc Heroes for 10 years, selling vintage comic books and an extensive variety of Magic the Gathering cards. But the last 3 weeks has been the most difficult. I used to love comic books as a kid. I kind of didn't really, after I became a teenager, I think I just kind of lost interest and moved on to something else. I don't know. I used to have a whole bunch of comics. I loved them. They were fun. You got a lot out of them because, those comic book authors, they always put little stuff in there and you're like, what do they mean by this? I don't really know. January 16th marked the start of a wave of break-ins in which he lost $10,000 worth of product. That's got to be an enormous amount of money in a comic book store. Comic book stores, I mean, they're not working on huge margins, right? $1 for a comic book. I think comic books were like 25 or 35 cents when I was a kid. I bought a lot of Archie comic books. Those were pretty cool. Those are pretty fun. And we had, I think, a whole bunch of Marvel comic books. Just random stuff. Who was it? The Silver Surfer that was in the movie Breathless with Richard Gere. Never really got into that series either. They threw a blue anvil. It's a tool through the bottom door window and crawled through the door, Thomas said. They came behind the counter and cleared off all the books on this rack. Just came through and bashed out the guy's comic books. Is there nothing holy anymore? I mean, leave the comic books alone. Go after maybe a bookstore? I don't know. Comic books, though? 9 days later, it happened again. This time, he caught the thieves on camera. Surveillance video shows a sedan parked and 2 people in frame. Thomas said they used a crowbar to open the back door and steal more books. They stepped on the glass display cases and shattered them. Just under a week later, his store was hit for a 3rd time. Video shows 3 people stealing more books, sealed product, and a whole case of statues. Each one of them had a tub, and each one of them had a specific spot in the shop and started dumping product into the tubs, Thomas said. So this leads me to believe this is organized retail theft, right? This is targeted. Somebody been into the store. They knew where the stuff was. They drew a little map. All right, you go here, you go here, you go here. This is organized. This isn't just there's a store. Let's run in there and let's just get some stuff. They knew what they were looking for. They had a game plan. They were organized. That's the organized part of the whole retail theft, right? Organized. Getting away with a total of over $30,000, including a comic book worth $5,000. I know comic books go for a lot, and I know there's collectibles out there. $5,000 for a comic book. I hope it was in one of those plastic sleeves, right? I know people collect records too. People collect everything, right? There's a market for everything. Thomas is now working harder to keep his business safe, taking matters into his own hands. I will probably be sleeping in here, he said. All right. This kind of goes back to the last podcast I was doing, which you probably couldn't hear. Need insurance for losses. I think insurance companies are going to stop insuring Portland. I think that's a story in the next 6 months that insurance companies go hardcore, commercial insurance companies that are insuring businesses, commercial buildings, commercial space. I think insurance companies, that is something that you will hear because you're looking at the data and that's all that they do. They don't have an obligation to insure everybody. And then are we going to blame lack of insurance in Portland on racism? Maybe. Portland's pretty white, isn't it? Pretty white. That's just not a thing. So this guy is going to be sleeping. I'll probably be sleeping in here. It kind of goes to, you move into your house and you have gunshots. Going back to the prior podcast, you move into your house and you have gunshots. Well, that was kind of my first clue. And then, crazy people following me home. I'm mostly tolerant. I'm mostly compassionate, but, the crazy people following me home. And then the toxic smell that my kids had to endure at their school because, people in homeless encampments were burning up their tent. And, I don't want my kids smelling that. That would be, again, the least of my kids' concerns. Like, no, you're not going to school there. That's a hell to the no. So I'll probably be sleeping there. Thomas said that if his store gets hit a fourth time, this could put them out of business. How many times does it take before you're like, all right, yep, this is a no-go. We're moving. And I think that's where a lot of folks are at. I know a ton of folks are at that in Seattle. I had a quick conversation via email with somebody down in Portland, and they were saying, hey, this building is this percentage empty. This building is this percentage empty. And if this business moves out, this building's going to be 5% empty. It's happening. I mean, it's going on. You're watching it kind of unfold right in front of you. Itchy nose. Sorry about that. It's going on. And this is all to do with the tax base. So what's going to happen to make this kind of criminal activity? What's going to happen to make the 3 break-ins into this store go away? What's going to happen in the near future to have that, to make this situation better? I don't see anything. So you got to ask yourself, if you're a commercial insurance carrier and you look at the number of break-ins, somebody wants to renew their policy, are you going to go, oh, okay, yeah, sign me up because I want to, we're going to triple your policy and we know that you're probably going to get at least 1 or 2 more break-ins. They're going to back off. They're just going to start backing off. And I haven't had a ton of feedback on that, but I have had feedback that people have had policies canceled, but they were able to get another one. Yeah, it was more expensive. But you're going to see a situation where insurance is going to become so expensive in these areas of Portland that it's just not viable to have. And then if you don't have insurance, oftentimes it's very difficult to rent commercial space. You've got to have, space. I'm here in Bellevue. You got to have a policy to cover kind of, everything going on just to lease the space. And if you can't do that, you may not be able to rent the space. Now, they may not be able to rent the space anyway because of all the boarded up windows and all the broken glass and, people living in encampments outside. Those are the kind of areas where this is going on. And even if they don't have, encampments, people know where the commercial centers are. And I think it was Woodstock in Portland. I did a podcast on the other day where the owners of the, spot on the insurance. The insurance is a huge, huge thing. And that's what people will start to look at. And the carriers will say, nope, we're no go. And then people are, all right, so if I move my store to here, but this guy, the comic book guy, he's going to sleep in his store? I'm sorry, whatever business I've got going on, it's not worth my life. I'm out of there. Somebody sent me an email saying, with this storyline, and said he should be sleeping with his friend Smith & Wesson. Yeah, but then you're getting in a shootout over your business, which is selling comic books. I know it's your life's calling, and I know it's what you do, and I know you love to do it. Is that worth it? A guy's going to sleep in his store. I would be, no, we got to move this bad boy. If we want to continue doing this, we're going to do some research. We're going to close this down. We got to move this. And I think that's what you're seeing en masse happening right now. So you'll see the insurance aspect of it. And then you'll start to see the lack of tax revenue because all of these businesses, they all, there's sales tax, there's excise tax, there's, taxes on all the services, all the other businesses that come in. It's all part of that ecosystem. When you start to take out various chunks of it, it's not going to go well. Like I was talking to my dad yesterday about the $5 million per black individual that qualifies for it of reparations in San Francisco that have been proposed. And then city officials say, it's not enough. $5 million, not enough. Where's that money going to, say that did go through. Where's that money going to come from? Well, it's certainly not going to come from the city budget, is it? Because, city budget's going to be hurting because of the whole pandemic, shutting down. That money takes a while to flow through. And when you've got a downtown tax base that is, people have left, people are working remotely in San Francisco. They're not there. All the other little businesses are having a tough time. There's not enough, there's tons of office space that's, available. Some of these areas, you've got 30% vacancy, 30%. Basically 1 out of 3 spots is open. When you have that kind of vacancy, I don't think we even had that during the Great Recession. You'd get into the mid-20s, maybe the upper 20s, but 30%, maybe in some cities you did, but most of the cities that I kind of kept track of, you didn't even have that there. Businesses still, on the commercial end, kept going. Now, vacancies in residential developments, yeah, those were bloodbath. I remember doing appraisals where various cul-de-sacs, depending on where they sat, in the economics of the area, you might have 4 or 5 homes out of 10 that were empty, foreclosure, various stages of short sale, that kind of stuff. So when hard times hit, things get crazy. Another thing you're going to see, and I'm going to start doing some podcasts on this, is the real estate market is starting to come back. Here in Seattle, we're starting to see above price sales take place, meaning you got escalation clauses. You've got multiple bid offers. You've got very little inventory. Interest rates have come down under 6%. And before you know it, we're going to be back off to the races again. And I kind of said this would happen by sometime, mid-spring. It's already starting to happen. We're already seeing transactions because people have gotten used to the idea, all right, interest rates are no longer that low. They're higher. We're going to have to figure out how to make this go. We're going to have to do it because people are always buying and selling in, no matter what, whether it's relocation or whatever happens. So that's happening with the residential community. But as far as commercial goes and the tax base that those support, you just didn't know. Real estate took a massive dive here in quarter 3 and 4 because interest rates more than doubled. And this is kind of a little backfill to that story. And so it's been super slow. Through the holidays was super slow. But now we're kind of getting back on track. And that's Seattle. Other markets, you're going to have a tougher time because interest rates impact markets more. Each market's a little bit different. But there's still not enough inventory out there for all the buyers that, if they want to get into it and if they have to make a move, well, there you go. But commercial is having a tough time because of that whole work from home thing. And then you've got stuff like this going on in Portland. And this guy says, I call it semi-retired. I get to do what I love every day of the week and enjoy it, says Thomas. I don't get rich doing this. I do it because I love it. Do you love having your place broken into 3 times in 10 days? I mean, that's not exactly my time, my idea of being semi-retired. But again, these are people running businesses that have been there years and years and years. And, they probably voted in a lot of the politicians that are there and they're okay with it. And they're kind of stuck with it, right? Whereas other people that are a little bit more mobile or who it's hitting their taxes a little bit more, you're going to tax me what for getting what? It's kind of like I talk about the group of businesses down in the Castro district down in San Francisco who are basically saying, we don't want to pay taxes if you guys are giving us nothing. We had that podcast where the business owner was, hosing down the homeless woman out in front that was causing a big ruckus. How long does it take before you're like, no, thanks. I'm out of here. I'm not going to deal with this. This guy here, 3 break-ins in 10 days. I'd be out of there. I'd say this is not worth it. I would not be sleeping in my shop because, if it happens 3 times in 10 days, the odds of it happening a 4th time, significantly high, right? Significantly high. Do you want to be in there when somebody breaks in? I really don't. You're not going to be able to call the police because it's going to take them forever to get there if they're able to show up, depending on what else they've got going on. So, I go back to What's it going to take to turn this bad boy around? It's going to take a lot of what Portland doesn't have. It's going to take a lot of what Seattle doesn't have. It's going to take a lot of what San Francisco doesn't have. And that's backbone by politicians to make some decisions that are not real popular with their constituents. Their constituents know they need changes made, but they're just, at this point in time, why aren't the police showing up? They hasn't quite kicked in to exactly where they're at. So, all right, that's it for me on this one. I'm going to talk with you guys a bunch on the chat here, and we'll just see what you've got going on. What would happen if everybody didn't pay taxes, but people are too compliant? Won't happen. Yeah, that is, Samantha, that's a really good point. People don't pay taxes. Well, you tend to typically get shut down, right? They don't like that. That's kind of a no-go. But if everybody didn't pay taxes, yeah, that would be interesting. It would be interesting to see that. But there aren't enough people out there who are willing to go down those roads and do that kind of thing. So business leaders of Portland could change. Yes, they could, but so many of them, they're running businesses there because of what they love about Portland. And they haven't had, this guy, that Portland, that story I just read you right there, guy's probably older and he's just kind of set in his ways. And this is just what he's going to do. So, these businesses are taking a real beat down and they're basically, so. Yeah, it's really annoying. We live in the Truman Show. Yeah. All right. Guys, I'm going to end this live stream. Third time's the charm for me, right? I hope you guys have a great weekend. I hope you got something out of this, and we'll talk again. Probably going to go to maybe 2 or 3 times a week. And we'll go to 2 or 3 times a week live stream to see how that goes. So I want you all to have a great weekend. Thank you all for being here. Don't forget to hit the subscribe, the notification bell, all of that. If you want to check out reasonabletv.com, got some content there. That's where the good stuff is. And thanks again for being here. We'll catch up on the next one. Bye for now.